All right, we're right with Gamers and Geeks, and we are with.
Hi, I'm Ulysses Lendor. How you doing?
All right. So you are the winner of our monthly Modern April edition, and this is the trophy for it. So, we're gonna ask you a few questions, do our deck tech. So, what deck are you playing?
I played Burn today. Some people call it Boros Burn because it plays white and red, and that was my choice for today's event.
Okay. So, why the deck? Was it?
A couple reasons. This was actually the first competitive deck I started playing, and I've played it on and off for about 3 years now, competitively anyway. And I was on the fence on what to play today. I know that the meta is pretty diverse everywhere, and it's pretty diverse here because there's a lot of people. It's a good turnout. And actually, a friend of mine who's sitting off camera here, he actually convinced me to play it.
Oh, I got him.
Yeah. Yeah, he told me, he was like, hey, just play Burn, man.
So, do you think it was a good meta call? Is it just your favorite deck? Why'd you choose it?
It is my favorite deck. I think it is a good meta call now just because it's one of those decks that punishes you for having greedy mana, and you deal damage to yourself. That's like an extra lightning bolt or an extra 3 damage spell.
Okay.
And I mean, it's one of those decks where it just makes people have to, play around things and be careful, doing damage to themselves, leaving themselves tapped out, and allowing me to accrue hands. I mean, I got asked today. Every opponent at least once asked me, "How many cards do you have in hand?"
Right.
And I was like, 3 or 4, and
7 lightning bolts.
And if it was anything over 4, they were sweating. So.
Yeah. All right. Well, so let's get into the deck review. Okay. We'll start with the first list. What we got here?
Right here we got a Skullcrack. It's one of those fluctual cards, I guess. Some people play some of the main board, some of the sideboard. I like playing 4 in the main board just because life gain is the worst thing against this deck.
Yeah, of course.
So,
all right, then we'll move on.
Grim Lavamancer is another one of those cards that sometimes sees play. Other times people don't play them. It's really good against small creature decks, tribal decks, anything that comes out that has a toughness of 2 or less, just because it pings them. And if not, then I could just use his ability to hit my opponent for 2 and just use my graveyard as another burn resource.
All right, what's next?
Eidolon is he's a house. He's one of those cards that he's pretty much you're going to be your turn 2 play against most people, and usually he does 2 damage at minimum, just because we got to get him out. Opponent has to get him out of the way, or they're going to keep taking damage. It's one of those cards where you're probably going to want to side out when you're on the draw. On the play, it's fantastic. There's very few decks, I think, where on the play it doesn't work out, but he's definitely a veteran of the deck for sure.
All right.
Swiftspear was, in my opinion, she's the second Goblin Guide. Some people think she's better than Goblin Guide. I think it's all relative. The prowess is really good. The haste is amazing, and being 1 drop, and sometimes it's relevant against 1/1 decks because she has 2 toughness. And if they counter your spell, if you're playing a blue deck, they counter your spell. You cast a burn spell, the prowess still happens. So you may lose the ability to hit them directly or kill one of their creatures, but you still got a 2/3 at least swinging that turn. Goblin Guide is he's probably the general of the deck, I think most people would call. He's usually a turn 1 play. He's one of the only creatures that does what he does. Having haste 2/2. Yeah, you give your opponent land, but sometimes, especially when they're on the play, you can make them have to discard, which doesn't happen a lot, but it can happen.
Just see what they're playing, which helps you.
Yes, that's another thing. It gives you info, so if you're totally on the fence, you don't know what you're playing against, you
get that intel.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
Now we go for the actual burn spells that gets its name from. Riftbolt. It's essentially the 3rd play set of Lightning Bolt because it deals 3 damage to either creature or player. A little bit of a drawback because it's 3 to cast it, but most people cast it for 1.
Suspend it.
Yes, it's a really good turn 1 play, especially against creature combo decks, because you force them to either not play their creature that's part of the combo, or you can hit them. You can hit them if they don't play a creature. Hit them directly. It's really synergistic with Monastery Swiftspear because of the prowess.
I agree. All right.
Searing Blaze, even though it's full art, can't be read right now, but it's a really good tool spell for, again, creature decks and combo decks and stuff, because targets the player and the creature, and if they try to remove their creature themselves or bounce it or whatever, as long as it's a legal target when this spell is cast, it still deals 3 damage to their face essentially if you had a land enter that turn because of the landfall trigger.
Right.
Lightning Bolt is the best one drop spell in Modern, I think.
That's red spell.
It's the best. I think it's the best removal spell in the format. It's one of my favorite cards, if not my favorite card. So versatile. Three to their face, 3 to their creature.
Yep.
Helix is really good. It's one of the reasons why this is red-white. It definitely helps against the mirror match, which I had tonight. And it didn't win me the game, but it was definitely helpful because if you could gain life against burn, I mean that's their kryptonite. So
Yeah, sure.
Boros Charm is the other card that makes this red-white.
4 to the dome.
Yeah, typically the first mode is what you go for. 4 to them. Seldomly you'll use the make permanents indestructible. Very rarely do I use the double strike mechanic, but it can come up. And it's just a great card. Lava Spike is a lightning bolt, except you can't hit creatures.
Yeah,
so
sorcery lightning bolt to their face, basically.
it's also a pretty good turn 1 if there's nothing else in hand.
Yeah. All right.
Mana base, I run 10 fetch lands. Doesn't really matter which fetch lands you run if you play this deck, because you're only fetching up for red lands. So any combinations of red fetches will work. I run 10. Today was actually the first day that I ran 10. I usually run 11, and 10 just felt like a good number today to run. Most people run either 10 to 12. You don't want to go higher than 12 or go less than 10. That's what the rule of thumb is for burn, I guess. Mm-hmm. So I run a combination of Wooded Foothills, Arid Mesa, and Bloodstained Mire.
All right, so...
And then we got Inspiring Vantage for the...
3 of them?
Yes, 3 of them. Because it's a good card, you do have your white spells are very important in the deck. Mm-hmm. And it's really good against the mirror because you don't take damage and you can tap for red and white. And it's a great card to play, great land to play turn 1.
All right, so we got 4 Arids that you talked about, 4 Woodeds, and then looks like 3 Mountains, and then lay us out what you got here.
All right, so some of the mountains. The mountains, I run 3 mountains because Path to Exile is a really good card and people play it a lot. Right. And a lot of people expect burn to only run 2 basics. So I run 3, and people bank on pathing a creature when I have both my basics out, and then they see me go fetch for another one and takes them off guard. And sometimes it throws their whole plan out of whack. So that's why I run 3 basics.
I like it.
The Shocklands are the other way to get white mana out of your red lands.
So it looks like we got 2 Sacreds and one
Stomping Ground. And Stomping Ground is specifically for 1 card in the sideboard. All and right. We'll get to that. Okay.
So that was the deck review, and now we'll hop into the sideboard.
All right. Well, first we got super, I guess I shouldn't say super spicy because it's been played before, but I've never played it before. Ensnaring Bridge. I heard someone say today that it was played way back when in burn variant decks. It's just really good against, I think, Hollow One. Hollow One's seeing a lot of play. There were a lot of Hollow One decks today. And I nearly don't have any cards in hand, so if I can just burn their face and hold their creatures at bay, in good shape.
All right.
Another copy of Grim Lavamancer, for decks that require me pinging their creatures or small creatures, just to give me a higher percentage chance of drawing him during the game.
Okay.
Deflecting Palm is probably my favorite card in the sideboard. As soon as the card was printed, I knew it was going to see play in this deck. It's great against Boggles, or Bogles, however you pronounce it. A lot of people play that deck, and it's really good against one big fat creature because you don't target the creature, so it gets around hexproof, and the damage goes straight to them. And it's a great defensive play.
Voltron.
Yeah, it's great. It's amazing.
All right.
Path to Exile. Since I'm running white, it's a good way to deal with life gain creatures like Wurmcoil Engine or Kalitas, or even big creatures that are hard to deal with, like Ulamog and stuff like that if they're playing Tron. It also helps.
Anything bigger with toughness of 3, right?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah, that's pretty much Path.
All right.
Grafdigger's Cage is for cards that play cards out of their deck or cards from the library, or from the graveyard rather, like Hollow One plays some stuff out of the graveyard like Faithless Looting when they flash it back and whatnot, and it also doesn't let Bloodghast come back from the graveyard, but it's a great deck against any kind of collect company decks or anything like that.
Yeah, I was thinking Coco.
Harsh Mentor is another good card for company. because they have to take 2. Like if they're going to make infinite mana with their druid and their can't remember the card, Vizier, Vermines.
Yeah.
If they're going to go infinite with that, then it costs them 2 mana every time. So it just seems like a good card, and it's also good against Infinity with Ravager and Cranial Plating and Steel Overseer and things like that.
I hear you. And then the last one, and this is why we had the Stomping Ground.
Yes, this is why Stomping Ground's on the main board. It is, as you can see, there's 4 copies on the side. It takes the biggest chunk out of the side. It is for the Kryptonite of Burn, which is life gain or hexproof. So it deals with Leyline of Sanctity, which pretty much hoses burn. It's one of those cards that Boggles plays a lot, and they play it in the main board. And if you play in Lantern plays it in the main board too now. And it's one of those cards where if Leyline gets resolved, it's an uphill battle. And even if you had a good matchup, percentages can shift almost 50%.
All right. So what would you say that your toughest match was tonight?
Toughest match tonight was Elves. Haven't played Elves enough to know how good the matchup is. I played it during Swiss and lost, went to game 3 and just couldn't get there. Needed to draw a burn spell, drew 3 lands in a row. And for top 8, I played against him again. I got the win that time, but it was still rough. He played a lot of creatures, and every time I killed one of his creatures, he just flooded the board with more elves. So It was a little rough, and I ended up getting in the end, and I consider myself lucky because it came down to a misplay. I think he told me after the match ended he missed his Nettle Sentinel trigger, and he could have untapped it and had a blocker and just missed the trigger, and it's all I needed to win.
What would you say the MVP card was?
Definitely Boros Charm.
Boros Charm.
Yes, Boros Charm was my MVP card of the day because I was playing against I can't remember what deck it was, but it literally presented as the only out. Like it was my only out. He was at 4 life. He was threatening to gain life the next turn because he had Scavenging Ooze. I can't remember what deck it was though, and or he had some way of gaining life the next turn, and I knew about it. And I was like, he ended turn, and I said, if I don't rip this Boros Charm, he can stabilize, and the whole game just gets away from me. So I was just like, come on deck one time, and just like I ripped that Boros Charm, man, showed it to him, and he extended the hand, and that was it.
GG. All right. Any changes or tweaks you're thinking about making after today?
Changes, not really. Tweaks, maybe. Sideboard, typically with the way the meta fluxes and stuff. Sometimes I take my Lavomancers out, but the deck's pretty much set in stone for me. Creatures, I play 13 creatures, so the rest of it is burn, and I just coordinate the spells however I think the meta's going to be, and hopefully it works out, and I made the right call.
Well, thank you again, man, and congrats.
Thank you.
Let's see if we can get you holding up this. All right. Thanks, man.
No problem. Thanks.